How
have.
much do you think the typical athlete spends on a season if they go to like a couple more than 2 races?
Yeah, if you're doing a full season, I've projected out before. If you're doing a full season and this is me staying the whole time. Some people like go to one race and stay there for 3 days and literally just go there to race and then they fly back home, which I think is actually a little bit cheaper for the most part because you're not paying for the stay and then you can actually go home and work and make money and stuff like that. But if you're staying the entire time, it's about 10 to 15 grand. And luckily I have some pretty awesome sponsors that help me pay the way. And because there's not a lot of money in the sport and everything like that, but a lot of these athletes don't, and they're doing it just for the passion and the thrill seeking, that's something that they love. And you get to travel some pretty cool places, but yeah, some athletes are definitely spending a lot of their own money to do it.
It's tougher for them, I think, to get sponsors just based off the areas that they live. He's in Austin. He's been here his whole life. There's great companies around here that he's met through the gym, and his family that he knows, and his ability to network and create those business opportunities. He needs to. I told him, like, you need to run a class on how to get sponsors for everybody in ice cross, because even when he was not one of the top athletes in the sport, he was still one of the top sponsored athletes.
Well, the sports too, like we didn't cover this a little bit, but I would say it's like 60-40 split Europe, US from a race perspective. Like there's like 2 races in North America.
2 to 3 races in North America.
And then 4 to 5 depending
Right.
in Europe. And so if you have European athletes, maybe the costs come down a little bit, but there's probably, it seems like, just from my perspective, that European athletes are also less sponsored. So they're just doing a little bit more like, hey, I'm going to go to France for the weekend and then I'm coming back. And then
some of them have good sponsors. I mean, a lot of hockey brands and like Bauer, Red Bull still sponsors some of the athletes, even though Red Bull's not a sponsor of the sport anymore. So some people do. It just, again, it kind of depends on where you're at, skill level, and how much of a following you have, and how you can promote the sport, because there's so much content. I mean, you've been a part of it, so there's so much for a brand or a sponsor to get out of sponsoring an athlete, and if you do it the right way, it can be very beneficial to your brand. So you just have to align with the right companies and everything like that. And there's a lot of potential, and as the sport continues to grow, and I just talked to Marco Delago, I haven't told you this yet, and next season is looking really promising. We're hoping that the film will be available for streaming kind of right before next season. That's the goal that we would like, and we're supposed to have a pretty big season. We're gonna have another championship 500 race. I don't know if I can say where. It's not like official news or anything yet, but over in Europe. So it's looking good for the sport, and we're kind of going back. I feel like we kind of peaked back up from whenever we filmed the documentary. So not this last season, but the season prior. And then last season kind of went down a little bit, didn't have a championship race, and now we're kind of going back up. We're trending in the right direction. So with the momentum from this film and everything, I think things are going to be good. And I'll let DJ touch on that with kind of a question that you had asked, and we'd kind of keep getting sidetracked. But the distribution companies, we've had a few meetings and stuff like that. I don't know like where the film is actually going to be.
Yeah. I'll touch more on the sport as well. What's so impressive to me is athletes continuing to join the sport that don't have sponsors. Like probably the bottom, I'd say outside of the top 15 athletes, you run into a lot of guys that don't have hardly any sponsors. And we're talking like 200 athletes.
Yeah, 200 other athletes
that are really keeping this sport alive. If it wasn't for these guys losing money and sacrificing to keep it alive, it wouldn't be a sport. So they're really fighting through these hard times, and everybody's got that feel like it's just a matter of time before somebody gets a hold of it and it pops. You even have that feeling, and so it's a real testament to just continuing to fight and bouncing back from rock bottom.